So I've only got 9 minutes of space left on the camera, so I'm going to try and make this video in less than 9 minutes. Me and a friend were talking the other day about fear. We were talking about liberation. And my friend said, oh, there's one thing that I used to do, which has probably been one of the most helpful steps for me on this path. And it was that any time fear came up in his life around doing something, he had to do it. Anytime he was afraid of doing something, he had to do it. And we've had a very similar path, myself and my friend. Because at about the same age, I had a similar thing where I learned that I was so living within such a restricted comfort zone. I was afraid of so many things, and my whole life was being dictated by this fear. I wouldn't go and get a job that I maybe would have loved to do because of fear. I wouldn't go and act in a play that I would have loved to do when I was younger, but I didn't because of fear. I wouldn't start a band, even though I would have loved to do it, but I didn't because of fear. I wouldn't ask the girl that I was in love with out, even though I would have liked to, but I didn't because of fear. So there were all these areas of life where I wasn't doing things out of fear. And I read this book. It's a very popular self-help book, which many of you have probably read, called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I was 21 and I was in a big psychological crisis with loads of depression and intense anxiety. And I read this book and I found it so inspiring. And she says that all the successful people in the world have one thing in common. And that is that they don't see fear as a red light not to do something. Rather, they see fear as a green light which says they must do that thing. Now, I'm not talking about dangerous things where your life is in danger. I'm talking about psychological fears. So what I started to do was I'd write down 5 things that I was afraid of on a list. And the next day, I would tick off as many as I could on that list. I had intense social anxiety, so there was a lot of things that I could tick off. Even striking up a conversation with like an old lady at the bus stop was terrifying for me at that time, which seems silly now. But for me back then it was scary. Going to play squash at the university squash club, I was so scared of it because I was so scared of people. But I just started doing it, and I would turn up and my whole body would be in panic. I would think everyone was judging me. I remember walking to certain events like the squash or boxing or whatever I was putting myself in for. I'd be walking there like so scared to go because of the social anxiety. And everything in me was like, no, Chris, you can just go back to your nice little flat and you can just put Netflix on and you just don't have to do it. But I just had to. I had to keep walking towards fears. And then eventually I'd play guitar and sing, so I would start booking open mics, and I would go and sing at open mics, and I'd be meeting other people who were there, and slowly I started pushing my fears one by one. And anywhere where there was fear, I just had this thing in me of like, okay, I have to do it. And what this did is it slowly started to expand the comfort zone of my life until it got to the point where my life was so expanded that there weren't really many things like that I was afraid of. And I'll say that a different way. It's not that there aren't things that I'm afraid of. It's more that I know within myself now that even if there's fear, I can still do it if I want to, and that I'm going to be okay if I move towards it. And that is a lesson that is really, really, really important for us to learn. To be successful in life, but also it sets you up in very, very, very well for the spiritual path. Because on this spiritual path, we're going to have to face fear. We're going to have to face a lot of fear. There are many times when big emotions may arise within the body and the mind. And in my own experience, I've had big emotions arise within the body and mind, and there's a choice point. Do I run away from this? Do I come up into thinking? Do I go and watch something on Netflix? Do I distract myself, or do I sit and meet what is there and let it burn and let myself die into the emotion? And that muscle of meeting fear was created in very simple ways. Simple, practical things that we can all do to make a list of what we're afraid of and to move towards it. And as I say, even now there's things I'm afraid of course, in life. And sometimes I do see that I'm avoiding certain things. And then when I see it, I think, oh no, okay, that's where I need to go, that's where I need to move. There's something about this practice which is very simple and very practical, which brings about a surrender of the ego. It brings about a dissolving of the ego when we move towards these things that the ego is so afraid of. When we physically move ourselves towards them and we face them anyway, then those aspects of the ego that are afraid start to burn up within our courage. You have to have courage on this path. You have to have a lot of courage. And that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, is a wonderful template of how we grow this courage. If I hadn't done all of that, then I wouldn't have gone to all the satsangs that I went to in my 20s. I remember being at an Ajashanti retreat, 400 people in the audience, and I'm terrified to go up in front of this audience, but I put my hands straight up as high as I can and get the opportunity to stand up and go on the mic and speak to Ajahn. Or I'd go to see my teacher Ananta time after time. Fear, I don't want to go and sit in front of Ananta, sit in front of this crowd and get my head chopped off. But even with that fear, there was a movement towards going to sit and letting whatever is there burn up. So feel the fear and do it anyway. Where are you holding back? Where is your comfort zone? And how can you grow past it? This is not lots of things that we speak about, lots of things that spiritual teachers speak about are very esoteric. It's like, okay, I get it, but I can't really do anything about it. But this is a very simple thing you can do. Anyone can do it. All it takes is courage. Write down what you're afraid of.